Jim, you've mentioned Memorial Day as the beginning of the roster evaluation process. When would you think about here potential trade discussions for the Mets?
No, that's the 50-game mark, 40, 50 games. You try to have a pretty good idea what the team looks like. Obviously, it hasn't looked good so far, but you still want to give yourself a little bit of leeway into the month of June to figure out whether you're still this team that's 10 games, 11 games under 500, or you start to make a little bit of a run. You know, and there's not a lot of deals that you can make. Now, you can start to let teams know, hey, listen, if we're in this position in another month from now, we're going to be open to sell and, you know, start looking at our team. You can kind of get those messages out, but you don't want to throw up the white flag right now. It's a terrible message for your fans. It's a terrible message for your players, all of those things right now. So I would not be doing that. There's plenty of time in July to go down this road.
But you don't think right now, forget about externally, internally, they're not looking at this team saying, okay, this guy's got to go, this needs to change. Aren't they doing that at least internally?
Oh, I would say that it maybe hasn't necessarily started, you know, in the entire group, but there's probably one or two individuals that, hey, if we decide, if we're here in July, here are the guys that we need to move. And then, you know, you might get other feelers from a team saying there's more interest in other guys that you didn't think about or consider. But I think that it becomes obvious, especially guys that are on the last year of their contract, like the big first baseman.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Nice transition there,
Jim. Well done, Jim. You must host a show somewhere.
He is the guy to discuss here. Andy, how do you think the Mets are going to handle Alonso at the trade deadline?
Well, I'll tell you, Sal, reporting on this week as things have spiraled, the Mets aren't yet saying, like, we got to sell this year. They have a little bit of time to turn this thing around before the front office is there. But that's a little bit of time at this point. You get through June or through most of June, and it still looks like this, and they're not stupid. They're going to have to, at that point, start looking at selling. And it's going to be different from the winter where Alonso was completely off the table in Stern's first winter. They have to talk about Alonso with other teams if they get in a selling position. But what it's going to come down to is, are the offers going to move the needle enough to make it worthwhile? Trading Pete Alonso is a traumatic thing for a fan base, and for an organization, for a clubhouse. This profile player, right-handed power bat, couple-month rental, is not the kind of guy that gets you a needle-moving prospect typically at the deadline. Maybe one team gets crazy and does like a, you know, Aroldis Chapman for Gleyber Torres type deal. You got to check. You got to make the calls. But the Mets are not going to move Alonso if they don't get a good offer. So to me, the question isn't will they be willing to talk about him. Of course they will if they're out of the race. It's will anybody really step up to offer anything worthwhile, or do you just keep him and hope that helps you try to sign him?